Hi, and welcome to another one of Solo Printing's Power of Print podcasts. I'm Robert Hernandez,
I'm Lorenzo Cosio.
and we're your host. Today, we're going to be exploring color, and we're going to be talking about the power of color and what color can do for your pieces and your artwork.
Yep. The introduction to colors, the print world is CMYK versus RGB. And when we found out really early in our lives that everybody takes pictures in RGB and then it has to be converted to CMYK.
Yeah, so getting into that a little bit, CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's what it stands for, and that's what composes a color image in offset and in the print world.
Yeah.
RGB being what you see on TV, what you see on screen. It's composed of three colors, so that's where kind of the issue comes in when a designer or design is done in RGB, then converted to CMYK. If it's not converted properly, the image is not going to look good.
But when you do, that CMYK fills the gap with the whole color gambit. So we can create every color in the book, as we know, through those four main colors. CMYK creates every color in the spectrum, and if it's used properly and converted properly, it just comes out fantastic.
Yeah, so there's basically in the offset / digital print world, there's three types of equipment. You have, or two types, I'm sorry. You have offset, which would be sheet fed and web. Those work with ink, water, and plates and such to create your color images using CMYK. And then you have the digital world, which you have two aspects there. You have toner based, which is powder based color.
Yeah.
Also CMYK.
Yep.
That drops onto a sheet, is heated up, and it makes your images. And then you have the newer technology, which has come a long way in the last couple of years and is really thriving, which is the inkjet technology, which is what the future looks like for the commercial print world.
Oh yeah, and we're blessed to have all three.
Yep.
But the sheet fed and the web is really where it started with making the plates. Each plate has a color. You stack them on top of each other. It creates this beautiful, finished product. So it's like a symphony of color being put down on paper. And technology has gotten so great so that it's just become really, really high quality printing. And then we've, all the digital aspect of it that we got into, the digital printing, and then now the toner based, which is really, really exciting. That inkjet toner is really exciting.
Yeah, so color is obviously very important for your marketing collateral, and it's very important that it's color, things are color corrected and properly put together for your pieces, or they won't look good.
Yeah.
Color is a big part of color. Is also, it's psychological, whether we want to accept it or not. Certain colors activate the brain in certain ways and make you think a certain way.
Yep.
Hence, you have reds and blues, greens. If you think for a second, huge corporations, most of them are red, blue, green. There's a reason. Red puts a little bit of comfort, trust. Red's used a lot for. I see red a lot for retail.
Oh yeah, it's like a trigger.
Yeah.
It triggers us to think a certain way, either to call of action or something, or just triggers us to respond, almost like a sense of not urgency, but kind of, where it makes you think, man, I got to do something with this because it's right there in my face.
Yeah, and then blue. You see blue a lot used in healthcare.
Oh yeah.
Again, it creates some comfort and stability. And then green, you see a lot in the banking world. So it kind of just some things to think about when you're creating a branding campaign or a logo. You want to stimulate the mind without putting something in somebody's face. The color does make a difference, and it does trigger certain things in the mind. So it's an important aspect. It's very not very technical, but very psychological.
Oh yeah.
In a way, and
it's those subtle things, the triggers that keep behind us, like all the stuff that we do, the travel and all the tourism stuff that we do. Everything's got to be a nice yellow, The beaches have to be white sand. The water's got to be blue.
Blue,
The
yep.
sky's got to be blue. It's got to look, really enticing, and that's where color comes into play.
Yeah.
So good quality photographs on the front end, and then our part, which is making sure that if we need to retouch anything, we try to adjust the colors so that we get a good product when we put ink on paper. But it's very important.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, we can't stress that enough to the audience. Is that if you provide chicken X,
Yep.
you get chicken X back.
Yeah, that
So,
is great.
that's one thing I learned early on. I mean, a lot of times designers are designing things and on screen it looks beautiful. Number one, it's an RGB. Number two, is your screen calibrated to
Yep.
your printer or to some kind of standard, G7 standard. If it's not, what you're looking at is not accurate, and it might look pretty on screen. It's going to look horrible when it gets to the printer. So it's important to work with your print provider and make sure that at least you have some kind of standard on your screen, because I mean that's important. Or if you have some kind of proofing equipment that you're calibrated to something, whether it's your printer or standard, because if not, I mean, obviously it's going to get to the printer. It's not going to look like what you produced.
That's right.
Hopefully you see it before it goes to press. And if you do, then I mean, it's more time, more money possibly, and going back, redoing some of the stuff, recorrecting some of the stuff. So important to take care of that in the pre-press area.
Yep.
It's before it gets to pre-press, so that there's no delays.
That's right.
or additional costs.
It's a very important process part of it. If you're not sure, then it's worth time to have the good proofing equipment that we have, so that if there is a question, we can output a set of proofs or a scatter proof, because you're concerned about a particular image, especially if somebody retouched it, them or us. Output a scatter proof to make sure, because our proofing system is calibrated to our presses, so that we know that what we output on a color proof is going to be really, really close to what we're going to put on press.
And something we do here, at Solo is, with a new customer that's color critical, or even a job that's color critical, and we usually do this on the house. It's, we'll pull out, have the customer send us 1 or 2 pages of something that they consider critical.
Yep.
We'll process it, output a proof, send it back to them. So like that, they have something
Yep.
on physical to see versus their screen, and they could tweak it, or we send over our color profiles.
Yep.
To kind of help them with their screens.
Yep.
So that's important. Those are kind of some of the steps we take ahead of time when time permits on some, again, with new projects or new customers, to kind of get them to where we're at, and make it kind of an easier process than having to, now we get something, it doesn't look like what they wanted, and we got to go back, and it just creates a lot of turmoil and a lot of friction. So
We've all been down that road,
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be brighter. Well, what you put in is what you're going to get out, unfortunately, and that's where we try to avoid any of those by taking the processes down below and pre-press, to make sure we try to avoid any of those.
Yeah, and some of the things pre-press does. I mean, this is pretty much any pre-press department. I mean, we do it here is, once files come in, they're processed through our ripping software, and that software will flag, anything RGB, anything low res, anything that shouldn't be. But then our technician also is responsible, and they do look at kind of through the job and just make sure everything's tidied up. And then if there is some kind of tweaking, we'll talk to the customer and see if they're okay with it.
Yep.
And then we'll decide if we do it or they do it. But we got a pretty good team that's always kind of watching. I mean, pre-press is probably, if not one of the most important departments, just because if it's wrong there, it's wrong throughout the rest of the process. So they're kind of the gatekeepers, I guess, in a way, of bad work.
Oh yeah, and they do a great job downstairs. They really do. They catch a lot of things that we miss, that the customers misses, just because they don't, they're pushing things out, but they do a great job downstairs. They really do. So, yeah.
So I mean, I think in kind of a conclusion on this topic, I mean, it's very important to really look at your colors. I mean, it's, many think it's just it looks okay. No, it stimulates the mind. You mentioned hospitality and cruise lines and beach scenes. I mean, if you put a beach scene with some dark clouds and rain in the background, it's not going to be very appetizing
Not
for
at
somebody
all.
to book a vacation. So it makes a big difference. And I know a lot of big corporations, and especially in the tourism industry, put a lot of time, a lot of money into
Yeah, photography.
great photography, great video, whether it's print or online or television. A lot of money is put into that because that's really what drives and will trigger somebody to go, hey, wow, I want to go to that beach.
That's right.
I want
That's
to go on
right.
that cruise line. I want to, go on that trip. So I mean, that's it's a lot of money and efforts put into that,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. So that's what drives those businesses. So
And we're on the tail end of that process.
yeah,
So,
so we
you
got to
know,
produce
so we
it.
have to,
So,
we really do. We got to be very careful. We got to take a lot of pride, which we do, to making sure that what we put out is meets your expectations or exceeds it.
Yeah.
And we try to do that every single job.
and then also tagging onto that is when you are designing or rebranding your logo or your corporation, take some of these, do some research and take some time to look at what colors do to the mind, how
Yeah.
they stimulate, because at that point it's a good time to really analyze that and see if you do go a different route than,
Absolutely.
than,
They-
normal, than before.
We've learned, over the last few years, several years, that psychological aspect that you mentioned, that, that gets us into the digital part of our business, because that does a lot. You're targeting, and how do you do that? It's through appeasing, very aesthetically pleasing messages. Your marketing has to be aesthetically pleasing, so that triggers somebody to do something with it.
Yep.
And then that goes from our sheet fed and our web to our digital, where it's very specific, and they're really expecting a higher ROI on their investment. And that has to be equally, if not better, than what we're doing over here.
Yep.
Which gets us to kind of our next, our whole digital and toner base and inkjet, that you mentioned. It's just the level of quality is really,
Oh,
really
it's come a
high.
lot. It's amazing how in the last 5 or 6 years how far it's come and how it continues to grow. So that's definitely a thriving market in our industry, and it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah,
over
I
time.
remember when it first started, everybody was concerned about digital printing, right? But the quality has gotten so high that it's almost
You almost can't tell the
you
difference
can't tell the
in some
difference.
pieces, yeah.
Unless you get somebody with a really, a loop. You're throwing a loop on it, and you're looking for the screens and all that stuff. But even then, it's hard to, with the high end equipment that we have, it's hard to really differentiate
Yeah.
what's offset and what's digital. So that's where we see that big growth in our business. Doing it tandemly. Doing our sheet fed and our web, and then complementing it with our digital and now our new press, our iridescence,
Yeah.
and our
Xerox.
inkjet. It's exciting. It's really
Yeah,
exciting.
no, it is, and we're happy to be part of that.
Oh, yeah.
That growth and change. I mean, it's keeping it interesting and making us think a little bit more than
Well-
sometimes I want to, but it's
Yeah.
and investing. So it's definitely a interesting yet challenging time in the industry, and a lot of growth, a lot of changes. So we just got to keep rolling with them and
Yeah.
keep making things happen.
And I think that's what we've, in our industry, we've noticed that, we've realized that to stay relevant, we have to be able to do both and do it very well and provide those services and continue to add those services, because that, not only just short runs, but it's the variable data that plays into the 4-color printing that we're doing, the messages that we're getting out there, the advertisement, the call to action is all 4-color. It's all high-end 4-color. Our healthcare that we do is all high-end 4-color. It has to have a message there. It has to be a variable data. And those presses that we utilize allow us to do all that. To get that message specific to Robert or to Lorenzo, be very specific and get that message across at a very high quality level.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, kind of in closing this podcast, I think I can't stress it enough, how critical color is, your photography. I mean, that's all money well spent, in my opinion. It's help your ROI, help drive traffic. So don't take it lightly. That's if anything comes out of this, don't take it lightly. Make sure you're working with your designer, with your print team, with your print vendor, to achieve your best possible product for yourself. And I think the ROI will speak for itself.
Yeah, I think that's the lesson, is to take a little bit of time before, not after.
Yeah.
to do, ask the question to your print provider, to their pre-press team, ask us, but get involved at the beginning so that there's no, oh shoot, I should have,
Yeah.
I could have. No, that's too late.
Too late there,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, ask questions, get involved at the beginning. That's perfectly said. We have to stress that.
So thank you for joining us on this podcast for the power of color. Well, join us on our next one. Thank you. Have a
Thank you
great
very
day.
much. Till then.